Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight on the show, Israel attacks Qatar and Donald Trump pulls up his ally, Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll tell you why this poses a problem for Washington and what it means for West Asia. In the U.S., Trump ally Charlie Kirk has been shot dead. But will this make America rethink its gun laws? Also in focus, why India and Switzerland had a spat. India has called them shallow and ill-informed. How Oracle chairman Larry Ellison's wealth soared by $100 billion in a single day. In Nepal, by blaming a foreign hand for the protest is counterproductive. As America remembers the victims of 9/11, has it forgotten Pakistan's role in it? A country that sheltered terrorists is now being courted again. How an immigration raid in Georgia has hit America's ties with South Korea. Was there ancient life on Mars? We bring you the findings of a new NASA study. Why India's next big pitch should be cultural tourism. And why Africa is turning into the dumping ground for U.S. deportees. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi holds talks with his counterpart from Mauritius, says the two countries are not just partners but a family. Prime Minister Modi also announced that India and Mauritius will work towards enabling bilateral trade in local currencies. New Delhi views the island nation as an important pillar of its neighbourhood first policy. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer sacks his ambassador in Washington over the diplomat's friendship with the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Newly revealed emails show the diplomat sent supportive messages to Epstein while he was being investigated for sexual offences. The sacking comes just a week before US President Donald Trump's visit to the UK. German investigators searched the offices of a far-right lawmaker after Parliament lifted his immunity. This raid is part of a money laundering probe involving payments from China. The Member of Parliament belongs to the Anti-Immigration Alternative for Germany party. He has long been under the scanner over his alleged links to Beijing. The Philippines protests China's plan for a nature reserve on the disputed Scarborough Shoal. Beijing says it is to maintain the natural ecosystem of the South China Sea site, but Manila fears it will lead to an eventual occupation. Beijing claims almost the entirety of the South China Sea, through which more than 60% of global maritime trade passes. And the International Cricket Council announces an all-female officials panel for the upcoming ODI World Cup. The tournament begins later this month in India and Sri Lanka. 3 recent events have featured all-female match officials, but this is happening for the first time ever in a World Cup. Donald Trump is facing a new crisis, courtesy Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. 2 days ago, Israel attacked Qatar, a direct military strike. It was a bold move and a major blow to America's Gulf strategy. Qatar is a key U.S. defense partner. It's a critical node in West Asia's military balance. Remember, less than 4 months back, Trump was in Doha, the capital of Qatar. It was his first foreign trip as president in the second term. And Trump signed a major defense pact. It was meant to deepen ties and cement Qatar's role in America's West Asia policy. But Israel, which is another close American ally in the region, may have bombed that agreement. Inside the White House, there's growing frustration. President Trump is not happy. Fresh reports have emerged. They say Trump spoke with Netanyahu after the strike on Qatar. The call happened on the same day, and according to senior U.S. officials, it was a heated exchange. Trump told Netanyahu that the strike on Qatar was quote-unquote unwise. And what was Netanyahu's response? Well, he said he had only a brief window to act, so he decided to go ahead. And the conversation did not end there. A second phone call followed, apparently on the same day. This time, Trump was more measured. He asked Netanyahu if the strike had worked, and Netanyahu said he wasn't sure. Hours later, the Hamas confirmed the toll. 6 lower-level operatives were killed, but the Hamas leadership survived. Later, Trump spoke to the press, and he said he was unhappy about the situation.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I don't have to do that. I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. It's not a good situation. I was very unhappy about it. Very unhappy about every aspect. And we got to get the hostages back. But I was very unhappy about the way that went down.
The number of times he said very unhappy. So what made him so unhappy? Well, Trump learned about the strikes well after they began, and that too not from Israel, but from the U.S. military. In other words, Netanyahu once again kept him in the dark. What's worse, he attacked Doha, the capital city of Qatar. Israel says the target was Hamas leadership in the city. Washington says Qatar was informed in advance, but Qatar says that's a lie. In fact, they have publicly rejected the claim. And this only deepens Trump's problems. For months, he has pushed for a ceasefire in Gaza and for the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. But this strike has killed any prospects of peace. You see, Qatar was the one leading the talks. It was mediating between Israel and Hamas, and Israel went ahead and bombed it. As the Qatari Prime Minister puts it, Netanyahu has, and I'm quoting, killed any hope of a hostage deal. He called the airstrike on Doha an act of state terror. And how did Netanyahu respond? Well, he has issued a warning to Qatar.
We went after the terrorist masterminds who committed the October 7th massacre. And we did so in Qatar, which gives safe haven. It harbors terrorists. It finances Hamas. It gives its terrorist chieftains sumptuous villas. It gives them everything. And I say to Qatar and all nations who harbor terrorists, you either expel them or you bring them to justice. Because if you don't, we will.
Doha has called an emergency summit. They've called Arab leaders to meet over the weekend. They will discuss Israel's attack and possibly a response. Now, whichever way you look at it, West Asia is more unstable, if that was even possible. And once again, Israel is at the center of the storm. Also, the strike on Qatar was not isolated. It's part of a wider escalation. In the past 72 hours, Israel has attacked 5 countries. 5 countries in 72 hours, and this is apart from its war in Gaza, which is also intensifying. Israel is pounding Gaza with airstrikes. At least 150 people have died this week. On Monday, Israel also struck 2 districts in Lebanon. 5 people were killed. Israel said it was targeting Hezbollah positions, even though they have a ceasefire in place with the Hezbollah. Next, Israel struck Syria. It hit a Syrian Air Force base in Homs. The 4th target was Tunisia. Reports say Israel struck it with a drone on Monday. It hit a ship that was bound for Gaza. The 5th operation was in Qatar. We've already told you about it. And yesterday, Yemen was hit. Israel bombed the Sana'a airport. Fires were seen on the tarmac. So this is escalating. Israel is widening its campaign. Its war is spilling across borders and dragging more countries into the crisis. Yesterday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke with Qatar's Amir, and he condemned the Israeli strikes on Doha. The government statement does not name Israel, but it terms the strike, and I'm quoting, a violation of sovereignty. Prime Minister Modi also asserted the need for dialogue and diplomacy. In fact, that's been India's position all along. For Donald Trump, West Asia is becoming a headache. He prides himself on restraint. He loves to claim that he is ending wars across the world, but he is clearly failing in West Asia and struggling to reign in Israel, an ally that keeps defying America's warnings.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Great. By the way, I love how Mormons have more.
He was just shot! There were gunshots. Oh my God.
It was meant to be another rally stop, a sunny Wednesday in Utah. Charlie Kirk was on a speaking tour, his American comeback tour. He was at the Utah Valley University taking questions from the audience outdoors. Someone asked him about mass shootings. Kirk was just answering, and seconds later a shot rang. A bullet hit his neck. He slumped on the ground. The crowd ran for cover. It was not clear where the shot was fired from, a rooftop or an open window. The shooter is still missing. But Charlie Kirk lost his life to the bullet. And in that instant, America was reminded again that gun violence does not spare anyone, not even those who support guns.
What was that? He just got shot! Holy shit! Holy shit! There's been a shooting. We heard shots. We heard shots.
He was just shot!
Oh my gosh! Oh my god!
Oh my gosh! There were gunshots.
So who was Charlie Kirk, and what does his killing mean for America? Charlie Kirk was 31 years old. He was born in suburban Chicago. He dropped out of college. At the age of 18, he co-founded something called Turning Point USA. It's a non-profit conservative advocacy group. In a decade, it grew into an empire. It became the largest conservative youth movement in the US. So Kirk was more than a talking head. He was a pipeline. He would train young conservatives straight out of college, and many of them ended up working for Trump's campaign or the White House. And that got him close to the US president. Kirk's rise was meteoric. He had a famous podcast, The Charlie Kirk Show. He had millions of followers on X and TikTok. He was a best-selling author, and he was controversial. He criticized immigration. He spoke against abortion. He was against women's rights over their bodies. He endorsed conspiracy theories on the pandemic and climate change. But love him or loathe him, you could not ignore him. He was an influential conservative voice. Trump leaned on him to energize young voters. Charlie Kirk helped flip Arizona back to the Republican Party. He helped sell J.D. Vance to the MAGA base. He became part of the inner orbit of the Trump world, which is why the US president was quick to react. He called the shooting, and I'm quoting, a dark, dark day for America.
From the attack on my life in Butler, Pennsylvania last year, which killed a husband and father, to the attacks on ICE agents, to the vicious murder of a healthcare executive in the streets of New York, to the shooting of House Majority Leader Steve Scalise and 3 others, radical left political violence has hurt too many innocent people and taken too many lives. Tonight, I ask all Americans to commit themselves to the American values for which Charlie Kirk lived and died, the values of free speech, citizenship, the rule of law, and the patriotic devotion and love of God. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country.
So Trump blamed the left for this. He blamed the rhetoric, he blamed the system, but he did not mention the gun. And it's not just Donald Trump. Charlie Kirk himself mocked calls for reform. He cheered open gun laws. He tied firearm rights to freedom itself. In his world, America's Second Amendment was not just a law. The Second Amendment of the US Constitution protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms. For Charlie Kirk, that was a way of life, which is why the irony is cruel. A man who spent his career defending guns was brought down by one. For now, the hunt is on for the shooter. There is a massive manhunt underway. But even if they solve this case, they won't solve the larger problem, because this is a nightmare on repeat. Every day, Americans die from gun violence, mass shootings, suicides, stray bullets, schools, churches, concerts, campuses, Republican states, Democratic states, big cities, small towns. It covers all of America. As of July 2025, there were nearly 19,000 gun violence deaths and more than 2,200 mass shootings this year. And yet, America is divided over it. One side prays, the other side protests, and the guns remain. Will Charlie Kirk's death change that? You see, political violence is not new to the US, but it always shocks. John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, the recent shooting on Donald Trump, they jolted the country, but the assassination of a polarizing figure like Kirk does something else. It forces people to sit with contradictions. Here was a man who preached that guns protect freedom, who told audiences not to fear them, who dismissed calls for reform, and he died by the very weapon he defended. It's a reminder that bullets do not discriminate by ideology. So again, will America act now, or will Charlie Kirk's name be added to a list of martyrs? Chances are it will be the latter, because the US has normalized gun violence. Every shooting makes headlines, the politicians promise action, the headlines fade, and the cycle resumes. Charlie Kirk's death is not just a political assassination, it is another symptom of a country bleeding out one bullet at a time. Here's something you don't hear often. Switzerland has picked a fight with India. Yes, I'm talking about that Switzerland, the land of mountains, cheese, and neutrality. What problem do they have with India? No drum rolls needed. It is the usual suspect. Human rights. The standoff happened earlier this week. Geneva hosted the 60th session of the Human Rights Council. That's the United Nations Rights Group. At this session, the Swiss envoy made a statement. He complained of rights issues in multiple countries, among them India.
In India, we call on the government to take effective measures to protect minorities and uphold the rights to the freedom of expression and the freedom of the media.
So 3 pieces of advice for India: protect minorities, protect freedom of expression, and protect media freedom. And no, India did not ask for this advice. As always, the Europeans have given it for free. So India gave it back in kind. The Indian envoy called the criticism shallow, surprising, and ill-informed. He also flipped the script on Switzerland. He said if the Swiss want to tackle racism, India can help.
We would also like to respond to the surprising, shallow, and ill-informed remarks made by Switzerland, a close friend and partner. As it holds the UNHRC presidency, it is all the more important for Switzerland to avoid wasting the Council's time with narratives that are blatantly false and do not do justice to the reality of India. Instead, it should focus on its own challenges, such as racism, systematic discrimination, and xenophobia. As the world's largest, most diverse, and vibrant democracy, with a civilizational embrace of pluralism, India remains ready to help Switzerland address these concerns.
That's a zinger served hot. And Switzerland cannot complain about it because they asked for it. India is not in the business of giving unsolicited advice. That's a European thing. I guess you can keep Switzerland out of the European Union, but you cannot keep Europe out of Switzerland. And here's the worst part. It's not like India and Switzerland have bad blood. We have long-standing and warm ties. Back in 1948, the 2 countries signed a friendship treaty. From 1971 to 1976, Switzerland represented India in Pakistan. This was the period after the Bangladesh war. India did not have diplomats in Pakistan, so the Swiss represented us. Today, there is a budding trade equation. India is Switzerland's 7th largest trading partner. Prime Minister Modi has visited the country twice in 2016 and 2018. So overall, the relations are fine. Then why is Switzerland attacking India? The reason is not strategic. It's the age-old European disease, the tendency to lecture. We've seen this tendency surface in the past as well. In 2019, the Indian president was visiting Switzerland and the Swiss Amnesty released an appeal. They asked the Swiss government to raise Kashmir with the Indian side, to flag alleged rights issues. And another instance was in 2023. India summoned the Swiss ambassador and lodged a protest. Over what? Anti-India posters near UN offices in Geneva. So clearly, Swiss civil society has a problem with India. But this time, the government joined in. Let's hope it does not become a trend, because if it does, Switzerland has a big problem. They are living in a very big glass house. That's right, the Indian diplomats' comments were not random. They reflect Switzerland's reality. Take a look at this report. Switzerland reported more than 1,200 racist incidents in 2024. That's 40% higher than the year before. And who were the victims? Mostly Muslims and black people. Plus, the problem is systemic. Even the Swiss police force has been infected. Let me tell you what happened in Lausanne. Messages from a police WhatsApp group were leaked, and what did they show? Glorification of Nazis and KKK, the white supremacist group. Sexist jokes and homophobic remarks. The United Nations pulled up Swiss cops in 2022. They accused them of racial profiling. Also, the same Switzerland has banned the Islamic burqa. Leading Muslim groups appealed against it. Almost 49% of Swiss voters opposed it, but Switzerland went ahead anyway. And this Switzerland is making allegations against India. They are asking us to protect minorities. The fact is, India has been a diverse society for centuries. We have turned that into our strength. But Europe, they haven't done that. European countries have tried to crush minority identity, whether it's face coverings or hair coverings or religious rituals, and nobody criticizes them. When Europe bans the hijab, it's a tool for assimilation. If someone else does it, it is oppression. It is time we stand up to this double standard. India should make it very clear to the Swiss, you must choose. Do you want India's partnership, or do you want to lecture India? Because you cannot have it both ways. What does it take to make $100 billion in a day? Ask Larry Ellison. He's the co-founder of Oracle, the tech company, and he's just pulled off the impossible. $100 billion in a day. His wealth skyrocketed overnight. For a few hours, he was the richest person in the world, even richer than Elon Musk. How did that happen? Thanks to one of the biggest stock market jumps in tech history. It was fired by cloud deals, AI contracts, and a staggering earnings report. So Ellison's fortune grew by over $100 billion in 24 hours. It's the single biggest one-day wealth gain ever recorded. Oracle stock surged by almost 36%. 2 days ago, the company released its earnings. It came with a bold projection. Oracle's cloud business is expected to grow 14-fold in 5 years. Today, the company makes $10 billion in revenue. By 2030, they're expected to touch $144 billion. These numbers stunned Wall Street. There was a rush of investors. As a result, the stock exploded and Ellison's fortunes changed. Which brings us to what Oracle does. It's a popular name in the computer world. Oracle is a major software company. Their main business is database software. It is used by governments and businesses. If you book flights, if you manage your company's payroll, if you file your income tax returns, chances are you're using Oracle software. They also run a massive cloud infrastructure, something that all modern AI services need. Oracle provides this infra. It deals with all the biggest names in the business. OpenAI, Elon Musk's xAI, Meta, NVIDIA, AMD, all of these companies work with Oracle. You see, training models like ChatGPT takes massive computing power. A normal computer cannot handle that workload. So you need specialized cloud systems powered by high-speed chips. Most importantly, you need computers which are secure, and this is where Oracle comes in. It builds and runs these systems at scale, and it offers them to AI companies as a service. This cloud business has boosted Oracle's revenue. Their revenue pipeline is now worth $455 billion. That's a 359% jump from last year. And these numbers are great. The momentum is genuine. But we have to say, like with every stock, it comes with risks. Much of Oracle's hype rests on a few massive contracts. Like we said, the customers include OpenAI, NVIDIA, and Meta. If even one of these customers pulls back, it could hit Oracle's growth. The company is making big bets on AI. It is spending large sums to build capacity, pouring billions into new data centers. But if the demand cools, they'll have to borrow more or cut back spending. Plus, there's competition to consider. Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, these are all potential challengers. And the AI bubble is stretching. Many firms using AI still do not see a real return. So if AI fails to deliver business value, Oracle's business would slow down. But for now, Larry Ellison is on top because he held on to his Oracle shares. Ellison is 81 years old. He is the company's chairman, also the chief technology officer. He founded it. He founded Oracle 48 years back in 1977, along with two other men. And unlike other tech founders, Ellison never cashed out. He still holds more than 1 million Oracle shares, and he's held them for 25 years. That loyalty is what's paying off now. Moral of the story, sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You work hard and show patience. For Larry Ellison, it paid off. The suspense continues in Nepal. The chaos has given way to confusion. Everyone is asking the same question. Who will lead Nepal out of this crisis? Who will be the interim leader? We'll get to that, but first, let's look at the situation on the ground. The Nepali army continues to be in charge. They have extended the curfew until Thursday night, but the protests have died down. No major violence was reported through the day today. The only report was a minor clash outside the army headquarters. A clash between whom? The Gen Z protesters themselves. They were split over who will lead Nepal next. At one point, things escalated. This was always going to be a problem. The Gen Z protesters are not an organized group. They do not have defined leaders, and that is always a recipe for disaster. Nonetheless, the army and the president are working hard. They met the protesters again today. The president says he's trying to fulfill all demands. He's asking the protesters to be patient. So far, they have been patient. What they haven't been is united. Look at the issue of interim leadership. One group is pushing for Sushila Karki. She is a non-partisan former Chief Justice. Another group is pushing for Kulman Gising. He used to lead Nepal's power authority. He is seen as a clean and apolitical technocrat, and he is efficient too. Gising ended Nepal's long-running power crisis, so the young trust him. The young people, the young protesters. A third group is pushing for Balen Shah. He's a rapper turned mayor of Kathmandu.
Among the ethical and impartial individuals unanimously recognized by the public, we have also unanimously recommended Mrs. Sushila Karki to form the functioning government.
Our view is that the public sentiment and the feelings of Gen Z should not be played with. There are candidates better than Sushila Karki. We will not accept Sushila Karki.
I want Balen to be the next prime minister of the country. We cannot have leaders like before, who work towards their own interest.
Yesterday, Sushila Karki was the front runner. Today, the situation has changed. Sushila Karki is 73 years old. A lot of protesters feel that she is too old to offer change. Plus, Balen Shah has stepped aside. He does not want the interim leader's position, which leaves Kulman Gising as the front runner. Let's see if the odds change tomorrow. But for now, let's keep the ground situation aside. Let's look at the narrative around what happened this week. If you look at social media, especially Indian social media, the verdict is clear. Many users feel that this was not an organic protest. They say it was engineered by the CIA, that the American deep state is fomenting trouble in India's neighborhood. Is the CIA capable of doing this? Absolutely. In the Cold War years, they constantly meddled in South Asia. But in this case, It's different, and I'll give you two reasons why. Number one, remember who the new American establishment is. It is run by the likes of Peter Navarro and Howard Lutnick. Do you think they're focused on Nepal? Do you think they understand Nepal? Far from it. Maybe Navarro will blame Brahmins for the violence on Monday. That's how ignorant the US leadership is. And secondly, there was genuine anger in Nepal. 1 in 5 Nepalese youth do not have jobs. Tens of thousands are leaving the country for work. Corruption is rampant and stability is a myth. Nepal has had 15 governments in 17 years. In this situation, is it far-fetched to think that the people were angry, that they wanted change? Also, look at what happened on Monday. 19 protesters were killed in a police crackdown. It was the deadliest in decades. It added to the public anger. So we must question the whole foreign hand bogey, because this is not just a random opinion. It questions the legitimacy of these young protesters, the genuineness of their pain, and the credibility of their anger. Leaders across the world must realize this. People are the real power in a democracy. Their discontent is what fuels them. Yes, sometimes foreign conspiracies do play out. Sometimes deep state elements fan these fires. But in those cases, there's also a set plan, not a debate and discussion about successors and interim leaders. But in Nepal, we are seeing that. Leaders are not being parachuted or installed. Now, it's hard to say who may or may not hijack this movement in the days ahead. But as of today, Nepal's problems will not be addressed if the focus remains on discrediting the protests instead of fixing what is broken. "24 years ago, America suffered its deadliest terror attack. Nearly 3,000 people were killed, the Twin Towers collapsed, the Pentagon was struck. And the United States vowed justice. It launched wars, it hunted Osama bin Laden, and a decade later, found him in Pakistan, a country that called itself a US ally, yet sheltered America's greatest enemy. So questions were asked. Did Islamabad know? Were its agencies silent? But there was no accountability. And now the Americans are back to cozying up with Pakistan. They're signing deals and they're dining with the Pakistani army chief. As America marks another 9/11 anniversary, they seem to have forgotten Pakistan's role in it. Our next report has more.
24 years ago, the United States faced its deadliest terror attack. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost, for planes were turned into weapons. The Twin Towers collapsed in New York. The Pentagon was struck. America was shattered. It was under attack, and the enemy was still unknown. It vowed justice, and it began a manhunt that would last a decade. 10 years later, the mastermind was finally found. Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda. But he was not hiding in the mountains of Afghanistan. America found him hidden in Pakistan, a nation that declared itself an ally. Questions immediately followed. How had bin Laden lived undetected? How could he live near a Pakistani military academy with Islamabad's knowledge? Official reports were never clear, and no accountability ever followed. For years after bin Laden's death, trust between Washington and Islamabad remained fragile. Aid was cut, confidence was broken. Yet, even in mistrust, America could not cut Pakistan loose. The same state accused of sheltering terrorists was kept in play for Afghan peace, for counterterrorism, and for a regional strategy that relied on a duplicitous ally. And 24 years after the 9/11, Washington and Islamabad are once again deepening ties. The United States has signed a landmark trade deal with Pakistan. Tariffs have been reduced. Energy and technology partnerships have been promised. Oil exploration discussed. Critical mineral deals secured. Military cooperation has also returned. This year alone, Pakistan's army chief has been hosted in Washington at least twice. Security cooperation continues, focused on counterterrorism and regional stability, especially as China expands its influence through the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Today, diplomacy and economics have replaced demands and investigations. The ghosts of Abbottabad seem to be fading fast. And while Americans honor the names of the dead, few recall the unanswered questions. How an ally became a sanctuary for its most wanted terrorist, and why no one was ever held accountable. Pakistan once sheltered America's greatest enemy, yet 24 years on, it is being welcomed back as a strategic partner. Deals are being signed. Investments have started to flow. Military leaders are being received in Washington. The country that once gave safe haven to Osama bin Laden is now cashing in on trade and security ties. The state long accused of backing extremists is being rewarded instead of being punished. Accountability has vanished, while convenience has prevailed. And Washington has chosen to forget what Pakistan chose to hide. Islamabad is not being held to account for supporting terrorism. It is not being punished for sheltering terrorists. It is being courted and indulged. And that is America's uneasy truth, 24 years after September 11th.
Our next story takes us to South Korea. Remember, we told you about a U.S. immigration raid, the one at a Hyundai LG battery plant in Georgia. Well, the fallout from that raid is growing. And it is no longer just about immigration. It is about money. It is about trust. And it is about one of America's closest allies, South Korea, which is now asking if the U.S. is still a safe place to invest. The raid happened last week. The target was a $4.3 billion project, a project promoted as a symbol of U.S.-Korea economic cooperation. Instead, it has become the site of the latest immigration raid in American history. 475 workers were detained, 316 of them were South Korean. The others were reportedly Chinese, Japanese, and Indonesian. The images of engineers handcuffed shocked Seoul. And now the political temperature is rising. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says the raid will force companies to rethink, to question whether America is worth the risk, and to wonder if future billions should still flow into U.S. factories. Listen in.
From the perspective of companies, they will be concerned about disadvantageous treatment or facing difficulties when they're building factories in the United States. That could probably have a significant impact on direct investment in the U.S. in future.
Seoul has reason to be worried. The U.S. is not just a security ally for them, it's also a crucial economic partner. Take a look at the numbers from last year. South Korea exported vehicles worth almost $35 billion to the United States. Exports of computer chips and parts doubled to more than $8 billion. And Seoul is also the fourth largest supplier of steel to the US. Besides, the investment pipeline is massive, especially after the trade deal they signed this year. Seoul has promised $350 billion in new projects in the United States. $200 billion of that is in sectors like semiconductors. The rest, $150 billion, is in shipbuilding. And apart from this, Seoul has promised another $150 billion in direct business investments. But the raid in Georgia has cast a long shadow. Seoul says its businesses are in quote-unquote serious confusion. Meanwhile, the detained workers are being released. A chartered plane is expected to fly them back home. That departure was reportedly delayed by a day because President Donald Trump of the United States allegedly offered the workers a choice. He offered to let them stay in the US if they help train American workers. Reports say only one worker opted to remain. The rest are leaving. Buses were seen driving them to the Atlanta airport. Unlike other deportations, they were not handcuffed. That's another demand that Seoul had made, to not handcuff them now. South Korea's foreign minister called the arrests shocking. He told Washington that these were skilled engineers. They were sent to help build U.S. factories, to transfer technology, and to contribute to the Trump administration's own industrial goals. But the bigger issue is visas. Korean companies have long complained that short-term technicians face restrictions. Without them, factories cannot be built or trained. The U.S. says many were unlawfully employed. But immigration lawyers disagree. They say most were covered under business visitor visas. And in the wake of this raid, South Korea and the US are now discussing a new visa category.
We are discussing with the U.S. to improve visa regulations, including issuing investment-related visas, securing additional quotas, or creating a new visa category. If the U.S. sees practical needs, I think the issue will be resolved.
But the uncertainty has already spread. Some Korean workers are reportedly pulling out from other LG sites in America. Subcontractors are being asked to hire locally, and Seoul warns that investors may now be hesitant. And here is the contradiction. President Donald Trump has pushed hard to attract foreign capital. He has called South Korea a partner in reviving U.S. manufacturing. Yet this raid has sent the opposite signal. Foreign businesses see a risk. One day they are welcomed with tax breaks, the next they are hit with immigration sweeps. For companies investing hundreds of billions, that uncertainty is a red flag. The big question now is this: will the United States reassure South Korea? Will it protect the trade deal with its closest ally? Or will immigration politics cost America the investments it needs? Does life exist on Mars? This question has puzzled scientists for decades now. It has spurred everything from books and movies to billion-dollar space missions. And now scientists may finally have an answer. They have made a new discovery, which they call the clearest sign yet that ancient life could have existed on Mars. So what have they uncovered? And does it really show signs of past life on the red planet? Our next report tells you.
More than 3.5 billion years ago, an ancient river valley is said to have flourished on Mars, called the Neretva Vallis. Scientists think that it would have been filled with rivers, rushing through, carrying mud and gravel, carving its path into a crater called Jezero. When the water eventually dried up, it left behind a rocky outcrop. The sculpted region sits on the Martian landscape even today. And this is exactly where scientists have found potential signs of ancient life. A past alien life that may have existed on Mars. NASA scientists discovered this after they uncovered rocks using the Mars rover called Perseverance. It landed within the Jezero crater in 2021. The plan was to discover rocks created or modified by water that once flowed on Mars, looking for potential signs of life in the dry river channel. In 2024, Perseverance drilled up a sample from an arrowhead-shaped rock. And scientists were happy. This was exactly the kind of rock they were hoping to find. They nicknamed the reddish rock Shiava Falls, named after one of the Grand Canyon's waterfalls. It showcased small black spots, which the scientists are calling poppy seeds, as well as larger markings dubbed leopard spots. Then came more data collection, more research. Perseverance rover surveyed the river valley to understand the environment better. And now scientists have reached a conclusion.
This finding by our incredible Perseverance rover is the closest we've actually come to discovering ancient life on Mars. They've done the analysis on these leopard spots, and we think they are potentially made by some sort of ancient life.
NASA says that the texture on the rocks shows that something very interesting happened, possibly chemical reactions that may have been made by ancient life. Scientists don't know exactly how this happened or what caused it, but they think it could be due to the presence of microbial life. After all, the rock also has organic matter, carbon-based molecules, which are called the building blocks of life here on Earth. This is a major discovery, but there is a lot more to be done.
We don't know for sure that's what it is, and we won't stop after this first analysis. This certainly is not the final answer.
So many questions remain unanswered, and scientists can only find out more if the rock sample reach our planet Earth and is studied in labs. It needs to be analyzed by instruments that are far more sensitive than anything scientists can send to Mars. For now, the sample is still on Mars, enclosed in a tube millions of kilometers away. Until it gets to Earth, the truth about life on the red planet continues to hide in the gray.
Picture this. It's 2 a.m. in Kolkata during Durga Puja. The city looks like it's a carnival. Streets are glowing with neon pandals, music beats thump through the air, and food stalls keep the city wide awake. This is not just a festival. It's an economy, a tradition, and an unforgettable experience all rolled into one. Now imagine this energy multiplied across India. Holi in Barsana, Onam in Kerala, Diwali in Ayodhya. This, in essence, is what the world is waking up to. India's rise as a cultural tourism hub. Let's look at this new report. It's called Sky Scanner's New Cultural Tourism Report 2025. This is what it says. 82% of Indians are planning trips based on cultural offerings. 82% of all Indians. And driving this wave are young people. 84% of millennials are designing itineraries around culture. So are 80% of Gen Z. 76% of Indians have changed their travel dates to align with festivals. Of course, some of them travel back home, but a lot of it is also for tourism. And what about the international travelers? Well, foreign tourists too are prioritizing the deeper, more lived experiences. Festivals, heritage towns, food trails, 93% of them now explore lesser-known hubs for authenticity. For example, Varanasi saw a 76% surge in searches this year. Not for its hotels or restaurants. It's for the Ganga Aarti and centuries-old rituals. And that's not all. You see, India boasts of a very rich heritage. We have 40 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, 40. From Hampi's ruins to Mahabalipuram stone-carved temples, they are now the new attraction. 39% of travelers prioritize these sites. Others are flocking to historical sites like Jaipur and Varanasi. And then there's another trend where travelers are seeking out heritage villages and eco-cultural communities, like wood-fire meals, mud houses, hand-woven textiles, things that feel untouched by modernity. So what's driving these choices? When asked what matters most, this is what most travelers say. They want authenticity, seasonality, and even social media shapes their choices, like Instagram Reels from the Pushkar Camel Fair or Varanasi Ghats. And of course, some rely on inputs from family and friends. Now, what does all of this point to? A major opportunity for India. Cultural tourism could be India's next big pitch, and the gains are obvious. First is economic growth. Cultural tourism is already a massive revenue driver, attracting over 1.5 million foreign tourists every year. 1.5 million, along with millions of domestic travelers. Second is job creation. Local economies get a direct boost, from Jaipur's craft bazaars to Kerala's boat race organizers. Third is heritage preservation. Tourism money helps maintain heritage sites, temples, palaces, museums that might otherwise fall into neglect. Fourth is soft power. Festivals and rituals are India's cultural ambassadors. Each visitor leaves not just with photos, but a story and a connection. If promoted right, cultural tourism can become India's new thing, like luxury resorts in the Maldives or street food in Southeast Asia. It could become a global calling card. But there are some cracks. First of all, infrastructure gaps. Many sites still lack clean sanitation, accessible paths, and reliable booking systems. Second is over-tourism, or the risk of that. Hampi's ruins risk damage. Varanasi's ghats overflow during peak season. Third is the loss of authenticity. When festivals are performed for just cameras, they can look fake. The fourth is inequality. Tourism wealth often stays in the hands of a few. Often local residents get priced out, and that's a big problem. If India wants to lead in cultural tourism, it will have to solve all of these. Globally, travelers are done with cookie-cutter vacations. They want meaning. And here, India has a natural edge. Every 100 kilometers, the language, food, rituals, festivals change. So the world is already flocking to India. The question is how we play it from here. Can we make cultural tourism our big pitch, or will we keep underselling our greatest asset? Because in a world hungry for experiences, India already has the feast. Rwanda, Eswatini, South Sudan, Uganda, and now Ghana. This is the so-called third country club, and it is only growing. Every few months, more countries join the list. This is all part of Donald Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration in the U.S. Here's what's happening. The U.S. has signed deals with several nations, mostly in the global south, to accept undocumented immigrants deported from American soil. These are called third country agreements. But this raises some big questions. Yes, illegal immigration is a global challenge, but is this really the best way to handle it? What happens to the deportees once they land in these third countries? Why are so many nations agreeing to take them in? And why is Africa becoming a dumping ground for U.S. deportations? Our next report answers these questions.
Home to about 35 million people, Ghana is the second most populous country in West Africa. And now, it will also house U.S. deportees.
We were approached by the U.S. to accept third-party nationals who were being removed from the U.S. And we agreed with them that West African nationals, were acceptable.
After a bilateral agreement with the U.S., illegal immigrant nationals from various West African countries are being sent to Ghana. 14 of them have already arrived in the country. Ghana is the latest country to join a long list of so-called third countries, which have agreed to accept people deported from the US as part of President Donald Trump's sweeping crackdown on illegal immigration. Since returning to the White House, he has clamped down on undocumented migrants and pledged to deport millions of people who are living in the US illegally. So Washington has negotiated agreements to send them to countries other than the US. Now, several countries in the global south have become third countries, including El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico, and Paraguay in Latin America. Last month, the US deported 7 people to Rwanda. In July, 5 were sent to Eswatini and 8 others to South Sudan. Recently, Uganda also reached a third country deal. And now, Ghana has joined the club. But why are these countries signing deals? They want Trump's goodwill, be it in negotiations over tariffs, cuts in US aid, or visa restrictions.
First, we were slapped with 10% tariff that was increased to 15%. And then we're included in 36 countries that were going to be placed on a visa ban. But in the meantime, all 5-year visas were cancelled, and we were restricted to single entry 3 months. It shows the tightening situation in our foreign relations.
Illegal migration is a global issue. It poses several problems, from security concerns to economic burdens. But is this the best way to deal with it? According to UN experts, such agreements have left people stranded in faraway places, at risk of torture and other inhuman treatment. People are being sent to countries with poor human rights records and places they have never lived in. Critics also say the process is often arbitrary. There are concerns about lack of transparency and due process for those deported. And some deportees are imprisoned illegally with no end in sight. And thirdly, there is added pressure on the host countries to bear the burden of deportations, while already facing economic, social, and infrastructure challenges. Which is why some countries have pushed back. Nigeria says it already has enough problems and over 230 million people to care for. Apart from this, there is a jarring pattern here. Fact that mass deportations are being made to South American and African countries, which have historically been seen as unworthy of respect or equal partnership in the eyes of the West. Ironically, mostly Western policies and interventions drove poverty, displacement, and instability in the global south. And now, the region has become a dumping ground for deportations. And not just from the US. The EU and the UK have also mulled similar controversial third country plans. So yes, illegal immigration is a growing global burden. Offloading deportees arbitrarily and without the right systems in place doesn't solve the problem, but only perpetuates it.
The Apple meme fest continues. Yesterday it was the iPhone. Today it's the new AirPods Pro, which is basically Apple's flagship headphone. It's got a live translation feature. Basically, the AirPod takes in foreign languages and it live translates the message into your ears. If someone says hola, you will hear hello. That's how it works. The internet is using this template to create wild memes. Instead of languages, it's interpretation, what you said versus what you meant. Take a look. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. A deadly gas tanker explosion in Mexico City was captured on CCTV. Hundreds of people protest against ban on swimming in Berlin's Spree River. And in Rome, the zoo animals get frozen treats to cool down during a new heat wave. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2001, nearly 3,000 people were killed after 4 planes were hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists. 2 planes flew into the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York. The Twin Towers collapsed after a short while. Another plane crashed into the Pentagon. The attacks triggered America's global war on terror, including the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.